This is how I'd learn music production if I could start over. Just for context, I've been producing full-time for over 5 years now, worked with companies like FL Studio, Novation, Arteria, just to name a few, and I also help producers level up their production too, so yeah, I've made a beat or two in my time. Now to tell you what I changed, first I need to tell you what I did. So I actually started music production back in like 2004 on this old PS2 game. Fast forward to downloading FL Studio 11 in 2010, not cracked. And since then I've learned every version of FL Studio, picked up Logic and Ableton along the way as well. And after years of grinding, I can confidently say that there is no best DAW to start with. You've got a bunch of options, just try a few and stick with what feels right to you. Bottom line, pick one, learn it well, you can't go wrong. So if I had to learn music production all over again, knowing what I know now, I'd break it down into 5 distinct phases. I went through all 5 myself without kind of realizing it. I've taken a lot of the producers that I mentor through these phases as well. And I can tell you now that this approach builds your skills in music production way faster than just making a bunch of random beats and hoping you get better. Over the years, I've noticed that most beat makers only really like doing one part of the production process. I get DMs all the time like, "Yo bro, send over some loops, I'll add the drums and send it back." Trust me, I get it. I share the same opinion too. Drums are really satisfying to lay down. So if I was starting over, then I'd master drum programming first for 2 very good reasons. Reason 1, reps. I'd start by emulating the producers that I look up to, copying the bounce, sound selection, mix, everything. When I've got that down, and only when I've got that down, I'll then move on and experiment with my own sound. This will level up your drum game a lot faster, because once you can recreate a bounce and a vibe that people already fuck with, you can then start building your own unique sound based off of what actually works. Too many producers skip this and end up with like weird, unrelatable drums. They say things like, "I don't follow trends, bro, I've got my own bounce." It's definitely unique, but it's just not it. Reason 2, opportunities. So if you want to take music seriously, work with artists, be in the studio, then you're going to need high-level music. Now, from my own personal experience and working with producers one-to-one, I've noticed that drums are easier to get good at early on. You can build around melodic loops. You can even just make like really fire drum-only beats. Melodies, on the other hand, are a little bit trickier. It takes a bit more time to develop your ear. So if you're trying to move fast early on, get placements, work with artists, then drums will be your shortcut at this point. That said, drums are only one piece of the puzzle, because the next phase is what's really going to give you that longevity and versatility as a producer. Now, if I had to start over, the next thing I'd focus on would be hands down melodies and chord progressions. Drums bring the bounce, but melodies connect emotionally. So knowing what I know now, I'd approach making melodies and chord progressions more as like a student, not just freestyling random ideas, but intentionally breaking down the music that I love. So step 1, chords. I'd remake chord progressions from my favorite songs. No MIDI packs, no cheating. Maybe a little bit of help from like ChatGPT if I need a bit of help with the theory side of things, but mostly just using my ears and my keyboard. I'd focus on things like the emotion. Is it dark? Is it moody? Is it uplifting? Is it ambient? I'd study the voicing, the rhythm, the sound selection, even the layering, because it's not just the chords you use specifically, it's also how you use them and what sounds you use to create them, what instruments. Now, if you're early on and you are struggling to really kind of break tracks down and really dissect each element, then just go and watch some beat breakdowns on YouTube, because they will literally break down every single layer that made up the entire beat. And sometimes there might be layers in there that you didn't even notice, but make a huge difference in context with the entire track. Now, step 2 would be melodies. I'd go ahead and recreate sort of the main melodies that mainly just loop throughout the entire song. Whilst I'm doing this, I'll be asking myself, like what makes this catchy? The rhythm, the emotion. Again, sound selection and how it was mixed are just as important as the specific notes that we used. Step 3, counter melodies. I'd then listen out for those more supplementary melodies that kind of come in and out throughout the track. These really add a lot of life, a lot of movement variation, so I'd really study how they come into the track, the tension, do they kind of respond to the main melody, just really figure out like what they're doing in context with the whole track. Now trust me, this phase is crucial. Sure, you can just go ahead and skip this, use loops, use splice melodies and whatnot, but your beats and your production will always feel flat if you don't yet have a real good ear for music, because you'll not have the musical fundamentals down, which will just throw off your creative decision making even when you are using loops. But once that foundation is in place, then sampling becomes a whole new creative lane. Sampling expands your beat making ear in like a whole nother way. So if I was starting again today, then sampling would definitely be the next thing that I would lock in on. I'll be the first to admit early on I didn't give sampling the respect it deserved. I used to just think to myself, like, am I really a producer if I'm just using someone else's music? But genuinely, sampling is its own art form. It trains your ears in a completely different way. You know, you hear potential, you can flip ideas and reimagine them into something that is unique to yourself. And if I had to learn it all over again, here is how I do it. Step 1, I would study and recreate sample flips from my favorite producers like Wheezy or Metro Boomin. I'd dig up the original sample and then I would recreate their version, and I'd really analyze, okay, how did they pitch it? Did they stretch it? Did they change the tempo? Did they reverse it? What effects did they use on the sample? Which sections of the sample did they put together? This really builds like an archive in your head of different sampling techniques and really just builds an instinct for how samples are transformed at a high level. Step 2, I'd go deep on manipulation, really just practicing how to reshape a sample and make it unique to me. Step 3, I'd make a beat around a sample. Add my bass, add my 808s, add my percussion, my drums, extra melody elements, and then I just branch into other types of sampling. Sampling doesn't have to be melodic. It's more about the emotion and texture over it just being melodic. Vocal chops, ambient layers, even just like weird things like movie dialogue or like Foley sounds. But even with great samples, great melodies, great drums, we're still only about halfway there. Next, you gotta put it all together. So let's talk about arrangement, where we take an idea and actually turn it into a full track. This is a phase that most beginners skip. You can have the craziest 8-bar loop, but without a proper structure, the beat will just sound repetitive or even just unfinished. To put it simply, arrangement is kind of like storytelling. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's tension, release, there's contrast, there's interesting moments. So here's how I would learn arrangement from scratch. Step 1, I'd pick out 5 to 10 of my favorite songs that are in the style of music that I really want to make. I would then drag them into my DAW and then just mark the sections, the intro, the verse, the chorus, the bridge, the outro. I'd analyze and just study what's playing in each section, when things drop out, how the energy flows. If you do the same, you'll just start to notice patterns. Like during verses, things are more stripped down. During the hooks, everything's kind of more high energy and there's more elements going on. But these small changes in the arrangement and the structure is what keeps listeners engaged and what keeps the artist flowing too. Now, step 2, I take my own ideas, my own loops, and then I would try and restructure them in the same way as those 5 to 10 songs that we've already analyzed. It doesn't have to be complex. It's more about just learning what feels natural. Step 3, I'd focus on transitions. Just those little moves that guide listeners between each section. It doesn't have to be a standard like riser effect. Something simple like a snare roll using a snare that you've already added in the beat. You could just mute the kick for a bar. You could even just cut the drums for like a little bar before the verse comes in. Something that really helped me was just stepping back and trying to think like an artist. I'd ask myself like, okay, if I was a rapper, like where would I want to come in on this song? So if I was starting again, I would take this phase just as seriously as the other phases, because what's the point in having really good ideas if you just don't know how to present them? And once your beat's structured, the last part is to make sure it all sounds clean. That's where phase 5 comes in. So we've gone through the drums, melodies, sampling, arrangement. Now it's time for phase 5. Mixing. Now, just because it's last doesn't mean it's not important. Mixing is really something that happens during the whole process of making music. It's what makes your beats hit the way you want them to, and it's also what makes your tracks satisfying to listen to, you know, as a casual listener. Think of it like plating a meal. You've cooked everything, but if the presentation's off, then it won't land. When I first started out, mixing did feel kind of overwhelming. You know, you got all these compressors, EQs, stereo imaging. It was a lot, but if I had to start over, I would just keep it simple. Step 1, I would learn how to volume balance, basically just leveling. No plugins whatsoever. I would just adjust the level of every sound so that everything sits in its own pocket, everything sounds nice and nothing's clashing. You'd be surprised at how far that actually gets you. Step 2, get familiar with EQ. Just learn how to tame the low end if needed, clean up those muddy frequencies, how to tame the harsh frequencies. I just pick one simple EQ, probably just a stock EQ to begin with, and just practice. And a really important thing to say is that no, you do not need to EQ every single sound. If you've got your sound selection on point, hence really getting good at the previous 4 phases, then you don't need to EQ every single sound. I used to waste so much time trying to fix bad sounds when I could have just used good sounds from the beginning and avoided that whole process. Now, step 3, use reverb and delay with purpose. Want a sound to sit further in the back? Just add some reverb, add some delay. Want a sound to be more upfront? Then just take the reverb off, keep it dry. Main thing is just be intentional. I did recently release a full mix breakdown video. I'll put the link down in the description if you want to check that out. But that's the full 5-phase blueprint that I would follow if I had to start out and start producing again. Lock those in and you'll be unstoppable. Now, if I was starting over today, I would remind myself, you don't need the perfect setup to grow. What matters is how you use what you have, whether it's YouTube tutorials, video courses, mentorship, even just trial and error. There's endless information out there, but you just got to use it with intention. Now, if you're passionate about music production but just feel a bit stuck or overwhelmed, then trust me, I get it. I've been there. That's why I started mentoring producers just like you. So if you're ready to take this seriously and want direct support from someone who's been there and done it, then feel free to check out my mentorship program. I only work with small groups of producers at any given time just to make sure they get the support they need. And if this resonates with you, then hit the first link in the description and apply. If there's a spot open, I'll reach out. Peace.